Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again and welcome to any new viewers. This is To The Point English with Ben. I'm Ben, and to start this video I'm going to give you a quick test. So I want you to look at these 6 words and tell me what they have in common. Yes, that's right, they all begin with the letter A. Congratulations, you've passed your C2 proficiency test. The certificate's in the post. No, but apart from the fact that all of these words begin with the letter A, what is interesting about them is that the A here is actually being used as a kind of prefix. And this comes from the Old English preposition on. And on in Old English didn't only mean on as we know it now. It meant on, in, at, and toward. So it was a preposition of place but also movement. So for example with awake, the A or the A is being used as in, so in wake or in a waking state. And the same with asleep, to be in sleep or in a sleeping state. So with ahead, that's referring to the movement, moving in that direction, going ahead. Aboard is to be on board, and ashore is to be on shore. And aloud, of course, is like out loud or in a loud voice. So over time, the preposition on reduced to a, and that's why we have these very common words in English now. Now, many of the Old English words that used a as a prefix have disappeared over time, almost completely. And when I say almost, it's because you may come across some of these words in poetry or in some regional dialects. For example, amorrow means in the morrow or simply tomorrow. A tremble means to be trembling, in a state of trembling, so shaking. A weary means to be in a state of weariness or to be tired, basically. And afeard, now this is an interesting one because this means to be in a state of fear. And afraid actually comes from that. So afeard to afraid, you can imagine how that evolved. So most of those words you don't really need to study or to remember because, as I said, they've pretty much disappeared from the English language. But I have 11 words for you today which use the prefix A, and we do use in modern English on a relatively regular basis. And the first one is ajar. No, not ajar, ajar. So one word as an adjective. And this just means slightly open. And when we use this word, we're almost always referring to a door. When a door is slightly open, we say it is ajar. I mean, it can also be used for windows, but it's much more commonly used for doors. So the example sentence, you've left the door ajar again and there's a cold breeze coming through. Okay, so you left the door ajar, so slightly open. You didn't close the door, but you didn't leave it completely open either. It's just slightly open. For those of you who are interested in the etymology of the words, this actually comes from Old English on char, which is another word which has disappeared, but it means turned or positioned. So on char would be in a turned position, and that's evolved to the modern word which we know now, ajar. Okay, number 2 is aloft. Aloft, which means up in the air or in a high position. So again, this is quite a common word in English, but we use it in a more sort of poetic sense when it's a special situation, when what you're holding in the air is special. So the example will help you understand this. He held his first place trophy aloft with great pride. So as I said, this is not just a normal object. It's not a phone, it's not a pen, it's not a fork. It's a trophy, and he's very proud of having won this trophy, so he holds it aloft with great pride. You may recognize the word loft in that word. So you take the prefix away and just loft. A loft is the highest floor or the highest room in a building. So the loft flat, for example. Actually, it's originally from Old Norse. The word lopt, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, just meant the air or the sky. So that's the origin of that one. And number 3 is askew. Askew, again, a relatively common word we use in modern English. These are not just words that were used in Old English and have disappeared. We still use these words today. And this just means not straight, or tilted or wonky. So tilted and wonky are kind of synonyms of askew. So an example sentence, is it me or is that shelf askew? So is that shelf askew? Imagine you've just spent the afternoon putting up some shelves and you step back and you look and you see they're not straight. The shelf is not straight. It's a little bit askew, so it's a little bit wonky. And number 4 is aghast. Aghast. Now you may be familiar with this one, maybe you've come across this one before, but to be aghast means to be shocked or very surprised or horrified. It's quite an emphatic word. So the example sentence, Jimmy was aghast when he received the bill for the car repairs. So he was horrified, he was extremely shocked. And this one's from Old English, a word which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but it's possibly has something to do with ghost. If you think aghast, ghast, ghost, the spelling is similar, the pronunciation is quite similar, and of course ghosts are terrifying, so they can shock and horrify you. Okay, number 5 now. And again, you may be familiar with this one, but as part of a collocation, and it's aback, aback, usually used with the verb take aback, and usually used in the passive form, to be taken aback by something. And again, it means shocked and surprised, but it's not as emphatic as aghast. To be taken aback by something, it's something that you weren't expecting, but it doesn't horrify you necessarily. And you can imagine where this comes from, right? As I explained earlier, ahead means moving in a forward direction. Aback means moving in a backwards direction, so moving backwards. So when you're extremely surprised by something, you don't usually move forward, right? You usually move backwards when something shocks or surprises you. The candidate was taken aback by the examiner's question about her political views. Okay, so imagine this is a Cambridge English exam and the examiner asks the candidate a question about their political views, and that's surprising, right? That doesn't usually happen. In fact, it won't happen in your Cambridge exam. Don't worry about that. But that's why this candidate was so surprised, because it's not normal. So she was taken aback, she was surprised. Okay, number 6 now. Aloof. Aloof. It's quite nice to say this one, aloof. But this means distant, emotionally distant, or not friendly, or a little bit indifferent, sort of in social situations. We all know people who are a bit aloof. Maybe it's just their way of being always, or maybe it's in some moments they are more aloof than others. But the example sentence, at the school reunion, Jane was aloof and didn't talk to her old classmates. Okay, so Jane was distant and a little bit unfriendly, for whatever reason that may be. Okay, moving on to number 7 now. Afoot. Afoot. So afoot, afoot. Afoot just means to be happening or in progress. But again, it's used in certain circumstances, certain situations, not just in day-to-day situations. You wouldn't say something is afoot in the garden when your children are playing, for example, unless they are doing something suspicious. It's often related to something suspicious. So the example, the detective knew something suspicious was afoot. So this detective is perhaps investigating a crime and he suspects there's something suspicious happening, something suspicious in progress that he perhaps can't identify, but it's afoot. It's happening at this moment. Okay, number 8 now, and perhaps you're familiar with this one, or if you're not, you could probably guess it anyway. But it's amid, amid. And this means in the middle of or surrounded by. And for this example, I've taken a real news headline from a recent article. Trump is in no hurry to talk to Xi amid new tariff war. Okay, so Trump is in no hurry to talk to Xi amid, so in the middle of all this chaos of this new tariff war. So that's a real life example for you there. And number 9 now. Actually, this is number 9 and number 10 for you here, because we have anew and afresh. And they basically have the same meaning. So anew and afresh both basically mean in a new way. And it's very positive. When you want to do something anew or afresh, it's like starting again after perhaps a bad experience, or trying something again. So starting anew or starting afresh. So the example sentence, they started their relationship anew after spending some time apart to reflect. But you could substitute anew there for afresh. The sentence would have the same meaning. So it's really positive, it's making a new start, starting anew, starting afresh in a new way. So everything very positive. And the final one, number 11, is astray. Astray. Not ashtray, but astray. Slightly different pronunciation. And this means away from the correct path. You've probably seen the word stray before. For example, a stray dog or a stray cat. Dogs or cats who don't have a home, they live in the street. Perhaps they've they've got lost or they've been abandoned. And it's important to note that astray is often used with the verbs go or lead. So to go astray or to lead astray, or in the passive form to be led astray. So I have two examples for you here using the different collocations. The package went astray and was never delivered. So the package went astray. So when a package is sent, it has a path, right, to go from the origin to the destination. But at some point on that journey, the package went astray. It went away from the correct path. Another example, the parents insisted that their son had been led astray by the older kids. Okay, so the son had been led astray. He had been led from the correct path. So I would imagine in this situation that this boy has perhaps got in trouble. He's done something naughty, but that his parents are defending him, saying perhaps it's not really his fault. The older kids led him astray. They were a bad influence, basically. Okay, don't forget to come up with your own examples for those words, as always, with an emotional connection. Share them in the comments. You may want to use them in your Cambridge English exam at some point. If you are studying for a Cambridge English exam, don't forget I have my preparation courses for the B2 First, C1 Advanced and C2 Proficiency. The link is in the description, and also you can find my grammar course there too. Okay, I'll see you very soon for another video.